Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Shan and today I have for you my wrap up for January. There were 5 books that I read this month and I'm quite chuffed with that. There were some pretty big books in there too, so let me show you what I read. First book is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. I absolutely loved this book. This book follows the lives of 12 different women, mainly black women in Britain, growing up through different generations, different times, and it's their experiences of life in Britain as a woman of colour, as a woman, as someone who's potentially pushing the boundaries of society in terms of acceptance, in terms of sexuality. It opens up the discussion on so many difficult topics and I think that it is brilliantly written. It follows the lives of these people and it shows how they're kind of all interconnected. It is vibrant, it's fast-paced, it's so much fun to read. I loved reading all the different characters, but then the fact that you kept coming back to kind of main characters was a really nice way of writing all of these different stories together in one, and how different the characters are and how different the personalities are within that, and how even best friends can have totally opposing views on fundamentally everything, you know, their morals. And I found that really interesting. So that side of it comes out, and I love the kind of frustration that comes with being a mother to a teenage girl, which I have not experienced yet, but yeah, I can tell what it's going to be like already, of parenting someone who doesn't think you've done anything and doesn't think you've done anything right, especially when you're such an incredible character yourself who's done so much with their life and just shown people how different you can be and how kind of pushed people to accept different ways of life, all that kind of stuff. It was just a really good book. I would thoroughly recommend that you read this. It was the winner, the joint winner of the Booker Prize 2019. So yeah, it's brilliant. The way that Bernardine Evaristo writes is kind of this incredible prose that never really feels like you're reading a sentence, if that makes sense. There's kind of not capital letters places, but it's a really good way of writing, and it actually makes the book flow really well. So that was one that I loved reading. The next book I read this month is The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes, and I have a kind of love-hate relationship with Jojo Moyes. Some of her books I absolutely adore and some just don't hit the mark for me. This book I'd heard so many good things about and I got it for Christmas, really excited to read it. It did not disappoint. This is just such a good book. It is about it's set in the 1930s it starts in England, and there's Alice who is kind of not fitting in with her family, but it being, you know, the expectation of her is that she will marry well and settle down and have children and live this kind of quiet life, and Alice isn't ready for that, or maybe she just doesn't even actually want that life. Maybe she wants to go out and work things out for herself. So she marries an American who has kind of charmed her on a tour of the UK. She gets back to Baileyville in Kentucky with her new husband and expects life is going to be this incredible adventure. Her husband Bennett, clearly whether or not he actually loves women or not, it remains to be debated. They have quite a few issues sexually, and whether or not they're kind of compatible becomes apparent. They live in Bennett's father's home with his father in the room next door. It's all a bit awkward. Alice doesn't really have any purpose or any kind of anything to do other than kind of go shopping, and she doesn't fit into that society kind of being the good kind of kept woman. A pack horse library starts up and the woman who's running it is called Marjorie, and she's kind of ballsy, gutsy, determined, doesn't need a man. Very different to Alice, and Alice steps up and says, I'll help. She's ridden horses back in England, but kind of in a different way, not kind of traipsing around mountains. And Alice finds that she loves this job. They're delivering books to people over kind of, I don't know if it's hundreds of miles, but a really vast area, and they're taking books to young girls who are teaching them to read. And she gets to know all these different families and everything that's going on. And it's really interesting to see her kind of growing as a person through this library. It makes such a huge difference to her life. And then I'm not going to give away any spoilers. Some things go wrong. There's a huge flood. It's very dramatic. And I just found that drama could have been too much, but actually I think Jojo Moyes kind of contained that drama, and it wasn't kind of overly dramatic, if that makes sense. But I really love this book. It's a book to get lost in a different time, in a different country. It's a book to kind of just really immerse yourself in, and I was having dreams about this place in my brain, so I really just loved it. Great book. The third book I read this month is Normal People by Sally Rooney, and again, I absolutely love this book. Sally Rooney writes incredibly well. Just an absolute talent, and you just want to read what she writes. Connell and Marianne are the main characters in this book, and they don't have a particularly exciting story or a particularly kind of gripping story, but you just want to know every intricacy of their lives because of the way that Sally Rooney writes. I haven't read anything by someone who writes quite like that in a really long time. The only one I'm kind of thinking is vaguely similar in terms of writing style is Frederick Backman, because his books also contain that kind of awkwardness of life, and Sally Rooney can write an awkward moment into a normal sentence about a normal thing, and you can feel the tension just from the way she's written it. And I think the story's fine, but what makes this book is Sally Rooney's writing, because it's just sensational, absolutely amazing. So Connell and Marianne meet in high school. Connell's really cool, he's friends with loads of people. Marianne is a misfit, she doesn't fit in with anyone, she is an outsider, and Connell and Marianne kind of start going out, but not going out, you know, just, well, they're sleeping together, so they're seeing each other, but he will not be seen with her at school. And instead of taking that as like a majorly rude thing for him to be doing, Marianne just goes along with it, which is obviously like, she's okay with that. Then they go on to university, and they're kind of together, kind of not together. They end up at the same university, and Marianne becomes the cool one. She becomes the one who everyone wants to know, who really fits in. She really finds herself, you know, in that way that you kind of can really grow when you kind of leave home and turn 18, all that kind of thing. She grows as that person and really changes. And Connell finds it harder to fit in. So there's this total change of dynamic between them, because obviously Marianne is now the person who's fitting in. She's also from a different social class, and I feel like it's her social class that's fitting in really well in the university setting, whereas Connell is from kind of a working class setting. His mum was Marianne's cleaner, but Marianne has all kinds of like problems going on in her life anyway. She struggles with a lot of things, and this book is about those kind of complex characters. It's about a lack of communication between the two of them. Sometimes you just think, if only you told each other like what you actually wanted to tell each other, then none of that would have been a problem. And that side of it is really kind of, I don't know, I find that really interesting because that happens to so many people. Anyway, I realised, so normal people, exactly. It just sums up normal, complicated, frustrating life, and it was brilliant. And I really need to read Conversations with Friends, also by Sally Rooney, so I'm going to go get that out of the library. Okay, sorry, I'm aware this might be a long video. The fourth book I read this month is called Trespass by Rose Tremaine. This one was a bit of a frustrating book. I did enjoy it, and I just didn't, I thought it would be more of like a thriller, but it turned out to be kind of a not thriller. There was nothing I didn't really expect in it, and it was just a bit bleh. It's set in France. There is an old building that is owned by this kind of alcoholic old man, and he owns the main building. His sister has built a little bungalow in it, like within the grounds, and all of a sudden he decides he's going to sell. I think he realizes he hasn't got maybe that long left to live, so he's going to go and enjoy life. He's going to sell this place to a foreigner who's going to spend loads of money on it, and he's really going to make the most of that. But obviously his sister still lives there, so she has a problem with that. into this also steps a kind of aging antique dealer from London who has had enough of London life and wants to relocate to the country. He loves the house, but he hates the bungalow. He ends up, I can't give away too many spoilers, but it just was a slightly clunky book, and I guess maybe coming after the incredible books that I read so far this month, it was just harder to kind of fit this one in there. I did enjoy it, but it definitely wasn't on a par with any of those other ones I read this month. And in spite of the fact that I read 3 incredible books so far, 1 okay book, this book was amazing. Scythe by Neil Shusterman. You know how much I love a young adult dystopian novel. This book did not disappoint. It was incredible. It's set in a future world where there's no longer illness, there's no longer kind of death in that sense. You can become deadish if you like, jump off a building and die, but you're then revived in a revival centre and you come back to life. The only people who can have the power to kill people are scythes. Scythes glean people, and by gleaning it means killing, ceasing to exist. And the scythes have a very important role to play in society in terms of keeping the population down. And so that is a scythe's job, is to kill people. They have to choose the people they are going to kill. They have to train to become a scythe, and that's kind of where the story starts, is we see Citra and Rowan, and these are 2 young teenagers who are taken under the wing of a scythe Faraday, to become scythes. So they're in training, they're learning all about killing, they're learning about different forms of martial art, about different knives, different poisons, different ways to kill people. You shouldn't want to kill a person, is the kind of fundamental thing about being a scythe. You obviously do kill people, but it shouldn't be something that you take pleasure in doing. And there seems to be this kind of uprising within the scythes of kind of younger scythes who are actually enjoying killing people, which is obviously not really where you want the scythes to be, because genuinely that's murder. There's kind of this inequality within the scythe kind of community about how they should be going forward with the gleaning, and they meet relatively regularly. There are so many plot twists in this book. And the first one being with Rowan and Citra. The scythe Faraday, who's taken them on as trainees, no one's ever had 2 trainees before, so someone kind of speaks up at this convention of the scythes and says, well, hang on, let's make this interesting, let's make this actually a fair fight, and say that whichever of them wins, they have to glean the other one immediately. That will be their first act as a scythe. So all these kind of other elements come into play, and it's an incredibly interesting take on a society that does not have illness or death. It's a very cleverly written book, and I really enjoyed reading it. There are 2 more in this series, and I cannot wait to read them. But I will wait, because I can't read them all together all straight away, because it will just be too much, and then they'll be over, and then I'll be sad. This book surpassed all my expectations, and I had high expectations for this book, so I really, really enjoyed it. Let me know what you're reading at the moment. Those are the 5 books that I read this month. I will see you again soon. Alright, bye!